Nightcast. Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth brings you the current news from the world today and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Understanding the end-time events leading to the peaceful world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth.
Greetings, friends, and welcome to this January 19, 2014 edition of Nightcast. The governor of California has declared a statewide drought, urging residents to conserve water in what could be the state's driest year on record. The declaration by Governor Jerry Brown also means farmers will receive aid and more firefighters will be employed. Alistair Lighthead has our opening report.
The worst brush fire seasons, California is now battling winter fires as temperatures are unseasonably high and the mountainsides tinder dry. The blaze was begun by campers. 3 men have been charged with recklessly starting a fire, but it doesn't take much to set the brush burning. Homes have been destroyed and thousands of people forced to evacuate the area as firefighters are still trying to control the blaze.
We have identified that 5 single-family dwellings were destroyed, 17 additional buildings. Those buildings include outbuildings, barns, garages, and some other homes were damaged.
Coming down here this morning, it's really pretty, it's saddening to see it, yesterday the adrenaline was, so flowing like crazy, and today it's the day after the actual realization that you've lost.
And it's not just the risk of fire, there's a serious water shortage across California. This is a satellite image comparing last year's snowfall in the Sierra Nevada mountains to this year. Unless things change, the lack of snowmelt water in the spring will compound an already serious problem. Governor Jerry Brown has declared a drought emergency, which will generate much-needed federal funding, speed up the movement of water around the state, and relax some regulations.
Today I'm declaring a drought emergency in the state of California because we're facing perhaps the worst drought that California has ever seen since records began being kept about 100 years ago.
Rainfall levels are just a fifth of the normal rate. Reservoirs are low, and forecasters say as yet there's no sign of rain on the horizon. Alistair Lighthead, BBC News, Los Angeles.
And friends, that's not the only fire that's going. Well, we're having just a problem with our buttons here. One moment, I think we can resolve that this way. Yes, there we go. Thank you. Residents of a heritage village in southern Norway have been evacuated after a raging fire broke out there, threatening its unique wooden buildings. Flames spread rapidly after the fire began overnight in a house, a little village of just a little over 1,000 people. Jonathan Joseph has the report from Norway.
The fire broke out in the middle of the night. Hundreds of residents were forced to evacuate this historic village as it quickly spread, aided by strong winds. Laerdal is in the West Norwegian fjords, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The area is famed for its exceptional natural beauty, as well as some of its man-made structures. Local residents are in shock.
It's terrible, completely terrible. It feels a little bit better when I can no longer see the flames.
What can I say? The people in the village were very calm, but you can see it has had a deep impact on them. You become a little speechless.
Daylight revealed the full extent of the irreparable damage. The wrath of the flames was no match for more than 100 emergency personnel. Some of the best preserved wooden buildings in the country have been destroyed forever. They'd been standing since the 18th and 19th centuries and still brought tourists to the area. In total, more than 20 buildings were completely destroyed and dozens of people treated in hospital. The scar on this beautiful landscape won't be easily healed. Jonathan Josephs, BBC News.
And friends, there we go. Now she's working. There have been clashes between Ukrainian riot police and demonstrators the demonstrators have set fire to a lot of things, as you'll see in this next video report, such that it's almost another fire story. This is the tens of thousands of demonstrators are demonstrating at a rally in the capital of Kiev in the Ukraine. They have rallied despite new laws which aim to curb public protest. The BBC's Daniel Sanford reports from Kiev.
After today's demonstration, some of the crowd came here to the bottom of the hill that leads up to the Parliament. They decided to try and get there to express their anger at the way Parliament voted on Thursday, and this has been the result. First of all, the police were pelted with flares and thunder flashes, and then Molotov cocktails. A bus has been set alight. Other vehicles have also been set alight. One vehicle's been pushed towards the police lines. Behind those buses, the police are sheltering under their riot shields and occasionally throwing over their own thunder flashes and also gas canisters to try and force the crowd back. But so far, the police have not significantly tried to charge against the crowd, and the crowd are able to ply wave upon wave of attacks on the police lines with sticks, with Molotov cocktails, as I said, with flares, with thunder flashes, but so far they've not broken through the police lines.
Now, friends, let's put our chart up on the screen for just a moment while I explain something about the first two stories relate tonight to the fourth seal of Revelation. The fourth seal being depicted in the sixth chapter of Revelation, Revelation 6, as depicted as now we're talking about the fourth seal, depicted there as a pale horse with a rider whose is named Death, alongside whom Hades, hell, the grave, rides. And the activities of this horse and its rider have been described long, long ago by Jesus Christ in plain language, as reported in Matthew 24 and other parts of the four Gospels, using three different terms that Mark and Matthew and Luke wrote about. One of the terms was loimos, meaning disease epidemics, pestilences, the plagues of Egypt. Now, many of you you've been in the church a long time, may be familiar very much with those. But Jesus Christ used two other terms that the gospel writers wrote in describing the activities of this horse. And I've just paused to remind some of you that, Mr. Herbert Armstrong pointed out, friends, I give you, he himself speaking about himself, Mr. Armstrong, he said he gave us the basics, the foundation, the trunk of the tree. And he said, I leave it to the other ministers to give you the branches and the twigs. He said, well, I'll give you the trunk and maybe the major branches, but the little finer branches and the twigs, excuse me, I'll leave that to the other ministers to fill in the details. And the other two terms that Jesus Christ used related to this fourth seal, the pale horse and its rider named Death, were seismus, meaning seismic activity, commotions in the air, such as gale force winds of all kinds, hurricanes, tornadoes, even tsunamis, and the like, and commotions on the ground, such as floods and wildfires. Of course, the wildfires spew up into the air. Earthquakes, did I mention that? Volcanic eruptions, flooding, any commotions related to the air, things in the air and things on the ground. Seismic activity, seismic conditions. And the third term that Jesus Christ used in describing the activities of this fourth seal, the pale horse, was terake in the Greek, meaning troubles. But not your troubles like the mega troubles of the Great Tribulation, the fifth seal, but just troubles, and described in further detail as mobs and seditions, or as troubled waters, and that can mean both figuratively and literally. Well, the part that relates to floods relates to our next story, and how convenient it might be if some of the flooding sometimes would occur in some of these places, excuse me, friends, where we've been seeing both the wildfires and the fires that are caused by rioters and protesters. But this fire and the riot and the protest relates to that fourth seal because of the terake, the meaning mobs and seditions, trouble by mobs and sedition. And so that last story relates to the fourth seal as well, because of the mobs out there causing not just picketing and not too peaceful, they're confronting the police in a way that's trouble. And there's a lot of that around the world. If we have time tonight, I'll have a few more video stories related to that. But in the next story that we're going to cover a flood. Training, that is. This is actually something good, where men are training to be prepared for emergency services related to floods. And of course, that's only because there's a lot of flooding going on around the world too, and sometimes when there's fires in one place around the world, there'll be flooding in another place. And friends, God's left his hands off, and he's allowing these things to happen where normally he would jump in and do a lot of protecting and cause the water that's flooding one area to be moved to an area where men need help putting out some of these wildfires. But this is a good story. I think you're going to like this one. And good to be aware of. Ambulance crews from across the UK have been receiving specialized flood training. And there's a reason for this. After weeks of wild weather, the emergency services are having to use different skills in order to save people trapped by torrents of water. Cameron Davies has this report.
Preparing for the next big storm. This is how our emergency services have been honing their skills. Here a team are tackling an exercise where a driver and his passenger have nowhere to go as water pours into their car.
These rescuers are paramedics, but police forces, fire and rescue services and the RNLI all use this centre in Cardiff, and demand for this type of training has increased in recent years.
That's because of the weather we've been having. This has been a common sight in the UK over the past few weeks. The emergency services have had their work cut out, helping stranded motorists who've got into difficulty in high water. Back in Cardiff, the ambulance team are completing their first exercise.
Are you pleased with the way you dealt with that? No, we need to polish and practice, but in a nutshell, 2 casualties, both made it to shore. Success. 1, 3, 1, 2, 3.
For the teams who come here, the centre provides an invaluable opportunity to train for a variety of scenarios.
At the moment, they are practising coming to get 2 casualties, himself and you, off the roof of this car.
And this is typical of the type of training that a team like this gets here?
Yeah, if they're coming here for a course similar to this, where we're looking at the dangers and the rescues from vehicles in water, then this is definitely one of the things that everybody will do.
Yeah, it's a fantastic place here for us. It gives us the opportunity to train in a safe environment, but a challenging environment, where it is slightly hazardous, but it still enables us to practice safely, and prior to us doing it in live incidents, make sure that we're happy and confident in our knowledge and our skills prior to going out to real patients.
The paramedics needed little time to rescue us from the roof of the flooded car, knowing next time it could be for real. Cameron Davis, BBC News in Cardiff.
Friends, on our next report, we've got a special feature that the BBC has put together that relates to the first seal. Let's put that chart back up on the screen for a moment. You'll see in the first column there where there's a little white bar and the number 1 at the top. That's to depict the first seal of Revelation chapter 6, which is described there as a white horse. And Jesus Christ described that white horse in plain language in Matthew 24, also in Mark 13 and in Luke 21, as religious deception. He said, beware and let nobody deceive you. And for good reason. There's a lot of deception out there. And in our next story, in this story that the BBC has put together as a special feature, it relates to the many incidents of religious hostility that are on the rise in all parts of the world, except for the Americas, according to an international study by the Pew Research Center. The proportion of countries with a high or very high level of social hostility involving religion in 2012 was the largest in 6 years, according to this report. The BBC's David Batty looks at the report to find out which areas are worst affected and what form the hostility takes in different parts of the world. And I need to give some credit in this report. I'll go ahead and give the credit now for the additional images beside that which the BBC shot goes to ThinkStock and Getty Images in this report, again with BBC's David Batty.
Religion plays a part in countless lives, but 3/4 of the world's population lives in countries where religion is highly restricted. That's according to a new report by the Pew Research Center, which also found hostilities towards religion have reached a 6-year high. You've got places where the government restricts religion, Egypt being where this happens the most. And then you've got countries where the society itself is hostile to certain religions. Pakistan leads on this front. The UK, France, and Mexico are ranked lower for government restrictions, but higher when it comes to social hostility. Note that North Korea was not included in Pew's study because of a lack of data. So what's happening and to whom? Christians and Muslims are harassed in the most number of countries, while Buddhists are harassed in the least number of countries. And Jews, well, they face more social harassment than they face actual government restrictions. Pew's research found that religious minorities are often targets of abuse, whether they're Muslims in Buddhist-majority Sri Lanka or Coptic Christians in Muslim-majority Egypt. And by looking at the percentage of countries where this happens, there's clearly a growing trend. Women and what they wear are also a religious flashpoint. 1/3 of countries saw women harassed over religious dress, a big jump from just a few years ago. When it comes to the overall rise in religious hostilities, the sharpest increases took place in the Middle East and North Africa, and the country with a population over 500,000 showing the least hostility, that would be Cape Verde. David Batty, BBC News, Washington.
Okay, thank you, David. And friends, our next story relates to someone Mr. Herbert Armstrong encouraged us to keep an eye on when they became more involved with the EU. Mr. Armstrong said, watch out. It may be a very, very quick coming together of the EU after that. So with that foresight, with that little gem that Mr. Armstrong gave us on how and what to be watching for, we're really keeping our eye on things, and especially what happens in relation to Bulgaria's entry into the EU more formally, as they have since January 1 this year. Bulgarians in the UK are considered to be good members of the community where they live, said the nation's foreign minister, as he spoke to Politics Europe and said that its better educated citizens who had moved to the UK were now supporting the British economy and not Bulgaria's. He spoke to Andrew Neil of the BBC about David Cameron's suggestion of limits to the freedom of movement of European citizens, which met a hostile reaction in the European Parliament this week. We're taking just this excerpt from the Daily and Sunday Politics program, which runs on the BBC and can be seen on an iPlayer worldwide. Here's this excerpt now with the Foreign Minister of Bulgaria speaking with the BBC's Andrew Neil.
You've described the British attitude to free movement as, quote, an intimidation campaign. That's pretty strong, is it not?
Well, it's the way Bulgarian citizens have seen this campaign, and that is why I had to say it as we felt it. But of course, what is more important now that this campaign proved to be ungrounded, and we are ready to reset our relations and start giving positive messages on both sides.
But this is a country which, over the past 12 years or so, has taken in around 3 million, a net increase of 3 million migrants. It's hardly an unwelcoming country in general.
Definitely. That's why we were surprised by the debate that was going on in the past year, since definitely Bulgarians are not a nation which is ready to come in big numbers now in the United Kingdom, and we proved in the past years that those Bulgarians that are already here in the United Kingdom, they contribute and they are good members of the communities where they live. That's why this campaign was a bit not understandable for us.
Is it not a problem, an even bigger problem for Bulgaria, though, that you're going to lose, or you're at risk of losing, some of your best, your brightest, your hardest working, your best educated are going to leave Bulgaria, and they're going to come here, and we'll get the benefit of them?
It is true. If we talk about the problem, I would say that sometimes it's a bigger problem for us, because highly educated people do not stay and work for our economy, but they support the British economy in this case. But that's part of the rules within the European Union. People are free to go where they would like to, where they will feel welcome, and where they would like to finally continue their lives. So we are ready, and we do accept that. On our side, we also had to accept some difficult rules, including, by the way, another transitional period that was in our accession treaty. As of 1st of January 2014, EU citizens are allowed to come and buy agricultural land in Bulgaria. There was also debate there, but our government said clearly it's part of our commitments, it's not negotiable, and yes, from 1st of January 2014, we apply these rules.
Foreign Minister, the evidence we've seen so far, it's very early days, but there has not been an avalanche of Bulgarians or Romanians coming to this country, and those that have been coming here to work. But do you have a view as to when it's appropriate for people who come here, when they should qualify, how long should they have to be here before they qualify for welfare?
I wouldn't enter in a debate about the possible changes in the welfare system and social security system of the United Kingdom. It is, of course, national responsibility, and the national governments and parliaments have wide possibilities to change their rules, of course, within the European rules. That is why the European Commission, experts of the European Commission, will follow closely what is being proposed and adopted in the United Kingdom. We'll do it as well. What is important is that any change is not being done in a discriminatory way, and this is the general agreement and confirmation as well yesterday in my meetings with parliamentarians, leaders of committees, and also with Mr. Hague and Mr. Lidington, who reconfirmed, I must say, that any change will have non-discriminatory nature. That's very important.
Foreign Minister of Bulgaria, thank you very much for joining us.
Friends, in our next story, I'm glad Mr. Neil, by the way, made mention of Romania, because, friends, as I mentioned to that, I recall Mr. Armstrong saying, look, when Bulgaria comes into the EU, watch out. It's going to turn fast now. He also mentioned not just Bulgaria, but he also mentioned Romania. And when Mr. Neil mentioned that, as he was talking to the foreign minister of Bulgaria, as he mentioned Romania, that clicked in my mind. Oh yes, it wasn't, and I thought I'd just share this detail, it wasn't just Bulgaria that he said, watch out when they come into the EU. He said when Bulgaria and Romania come fully into some kind of united Europe, beware, it's going to spin together quickly. So friends, I remembered that, and I'm watching for that, and I share that with you and hope you'll be watching in that same way too. Keep your eye right here. We are going more and more full time, and you may notice we made it right on time tonight. I had all the equipment tested out well ahead of time tonight. We're trying to do that more and more, especially since we have some new features. Now, if you come in on our website, cogtv.org, and you're watching from a mobile device, a smartphone or any kind of mobile device, we've got some technology built into our home page now that can detect that you're viewing from a mobile device, and it'll redirect you to a page instead of being our page for a full-size PC screen. It'll redirect you to a page that is especially designed for a mobile phone. And let me see. Yeah, and now from that page, you then have to press the button that says, watch Nightcast. And of course, you have to do that from our homepage anyway. You got to press the button up there that says, watch the live video. But you get a special page that's designed for a mobile phone. And when you press that page on your mobile phone designed for you, it takes you to a different page than PC users get. It takes you to a page that our live video streaming host has especially prepared for people with mobile devices. Now there's one thing, and that's why we're trying to be very careful that we're on time at our scheduled broadcast time, because if those of you watching on a mobile device, if you come to that page even 1 second before we start broadcasting, or the internet delay gets the signal to you, it'll say to you, not broadcasting at this time. And even though we may have started broadcasting a second or two after you came online, it'll still just keep saying, not broadcasting at this time. And you'll need to recycle your page in order to be able to see our live broadcast. Now, on the PC version, thankfully, they've got Flash. They're able to make it so that you can be sitting on the web page all day long, and when our broadcast comes on, it just starts playing on your PC. But on a mobile device, you've got to come on either at the same time or after our broadcast signal is already there. Now, we're wrestling with the internet live video people about that, because we want to get it so that you can do it like the PC people doing. We're trying to have special code written. I'll tell you more about that as we succeed in getting that arranged. But I'll just tell you quickly, we're out of time now. I had hoped to play a story for you tonight. We'll play it tomorrow night, from Afghanistan, where a bomb was set off in a restaurant, and a number of people killed there after a raid into a Kabul restaurant. But friends, we're out of time. Thank you for joining me for this Sunday night edition of Nightcast News related to the Bible and prophecy. God willing, and the creek don't rise. We'll be back again with our next edition of the news from tomorrow related to the Bible and prophecy here on Nightcast. Until then, your host Stephen Lloyd saying, so long, friends.
You have been watching Nightcast with Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. Nightcast can be seen Sunday through Thursday nights here on cogtv.org. Tonight's program is also available anytime on demand in the cogtv.org video archive.